Hey everybody, my name's Ryan, and here at eTrailer we install, test fit, and review a lot of different parts. That way we could try to help answer any questions those of you might have. And that's exactly what we're doing here today on our 2021 Subaru Crosstrek. We're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the eTrailer Class 3 2-inch trailer hitch receiver. So I know whenever I'm going down the road, I see these Crosstreks being used to do a little bit of everything. I've seen people have bike racks and cargo carriers back here, and even pulling trailers, whether it be a utility trailer, a kayak trailer, and everything in between. So if it were me personally, I would want a hitch that would be able to handle pretty much anything you want to throw at it. And this is going to do just that. And on that same note too, I would also want something that looks good. So you're not really going to have to take away from the appearance of your Subaru. And for me, I think this hitch checks both them boxes. The hitch is going to be pretty much completely hidden for the most part. You are going to be able to see the receiver tube opening, but honestly, I kind of like it on the back of the Subaru. It just kind of blends in. And what really helps it blend in is this matte black carbide finish. Now, this is something that's unique to this hitch, and honestly, I'm a big fan of them. And my father actually has an eTrailer hitch on his vehicle. He uses it a lot and lives on a gravel road, so he's back and forth all the time, really putting the hitch through the ringer. And honestly, he's had it for a couple years now, and it still almost looks just as good as the day he got it. Now I'm going to give you a couple of measurements, and you can use these to help figure out which hitch-mounted accessories to get. From the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening, that's going to be about 15.5 inches. So if you do plan on doing some towing, chances are pretty good you can use a ball mount with a straight shank. The hitch is also going to give us some pretty good clearance actually, not only ground clearance because it does sit up nice and tight against the bottom of our Subaru, but more importantly, bumper clearance. So what I mean by that is the end of the receiver tube opening is going to come out just past our bumper. And a lot of our Crosstrek customers actually use folding accessories. So ones, whenever you store them, they're going to come up in this position to save you a little bit of space back here. And so that bumper clearance is important because without it, you wouldn't be able to fold them accessories up. With this hitch, you really shouldn't have any issues at all getting them stored upright and not having to worry about them hitting the back of your Subaru. Since this is a Class 3 hitch, it's going to give us that 2-inch by 2-inch receiver tube opening. That is a super common size, and a ton of different accessories will work with it. It's going to have a reinforced collar for a little bit of extra strength, and it's also going to use the standard 5/8 pinhole. Now keep in mind, a pin and clip does not come included, but if you need one, you can pick one up here at eTrailer. And also wanted to mention too, you can use a locking hitch pin. That way, if you have an accessory you always like to just leave in the back of your vehicle, you can use that locking hitch pin. It's going to keep it secure. As far as the hitch's weight capacities go, we're going to have some pretty impressive numbers. The maximum gross tongue weight rating is going to be 525 pounds, and that's going to be the amount of weight pushing down on the hitch. So that's a pretty high number, and you should be able to use pretty much any size bike rack or cargo carrier that you'd want to, for example. As far as the maximum gross trailer weight rating goes, it's going to be 3,500 pounds, and that's going to be the amount of weight that's pulling on the hitch. So that is the weight of your trailer plus anything that you might have on it. I do always like to suggest, never a bad idea just to grab your Subaru's owner's manual. That way you can make sure your Crosstrek can pull that much weight safely. With that being said, if you do plan on doing some towing, I would recommend grabbing some trailer wiring too. That way the lights on your trailer will match up with the lights on your Subaru, and you'll be safe and legal. So at the end of the day, a hitch you really can't go wrong with. You know, even though it is somewhat visible, I think it's going to look great and it's going to get the job done. Now, as far as the installation goes, this is actually one of the easier hitches to install on the Crosstrek. So it really shouldn't give you a whole lot of issues or take you a whole lot of time. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and put it on together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here underneath the back of our Subaru, and what we're going to need to do is lower our exhaust down a little bit. That way we have some room to work. However, before you do that, I suggest taking a strap and just running it from side to side. That way the exhaust will have a little bit of support, and we can kind of control how fast and how far we let the exhaust down. So we're going to need to remove 3 rubber isolator hangers. So we're going to have 2 over here on the driver's side and 1 just like it on the passenger side. What I did was just spray these down with some soapy water, or you can use penetrating oil as well. That just helps them glide off a little bit easier. But we'll take a pry bar and just work one side of that hanger off of the exhaust. And then if you follow the exhaust forward, there's going to be 1 more hanger right here. So we'll go ahead and get that one off as well. Once we have all of them removed, what you can do is loosen up that strap and lower the exhaust down some. Now what we can do is come over here to the bottom of our frame rail and remove these rubber plugs. And that's because we're going to use these as an attachment point as well as an access hole. So we'll just take a flathead screwdriver. We're just going to pop those out. And I do want to mention from this point on, anything we do to this side of our vehicle, we're also going to do to the other side because they'll be set up the exact same way. Now what we need to do is come to this hole here closest to the front. You can see it's a little bit larger. We're going to use that as an access hole. That way we can fish wire our hardware into place. The only issue is it's just a little bit too small to actually get our hardware inside there. So this is one of the spacer blocks and one of our carriage bolts. You can see they don't fit. So what we need to do is just enlarge it a little bit. I'm going to use a step style drill bit to open it up just big enough to get our hardware in there. Since we don't have to remove a ton of material, you could use a hand file to open that up as well, but it might just take you a little bit longer. Or you could also use some type of die grinder bit, something along them lines, just to open it up a little. So as you can see, once we have it large enough, our spacer block will go in with ease. You actually don't want to push it in the frame rail just yet. You just want to make sure it fits. And same thing with our carriage bolt here. So now that we verified that, not a bad idea to come back with some spray paint and just put a layer of paint over that exposed metal. That way we don't have to worry about rust or anything like that. So after we gave our paint a few minutes to dry, we can now get our hardware in place. And the way that we're going to get our hardware into this attachment point here, we're going to use a fish wire. And what I like to do, take the coiled end and just kind of line up the 2 holes. It makes it a little easier because we're going to take that coiled end, feed it through that hole, and we want the coiled end to drop out of this one that we enlarged here. We drop it down, hang on to it, grab one of our spacer blocks and our carriage bolt. Carriage bolt's going to thread onto the pull wire. And then we can feed our hardware inside one at a time. We can pull on the other end of our wire until we get the bolt to drop down like so. Now for this attachment point, it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to use the reverse fish wire technique. So we'll grab the coiled end, put a spacer block over it, thread on one of the carriage bolts. Then we're going to push the carriage bolt in first, followed by our spacer block. And we can just pull back down on it and get the bolt to drop down through like so. So before we actually lift our hitch up into place, what I suggest doing is taking the included spacer blocks like these and taping them to this attachment point here on each side of our hitch. You want to line up the hole in the block with the hole in the hitch there, And that's just going to make life a lot easier when we go to put this up, as opposed to trying to hold the hitch above our head and get this spacer block in there. Now with an extra set of hands, we can take our hitch and put it into position. So you want to make sure to grab your pull wires and put them through the corresponding holes in the hitch. When you do this, you want to make sure to go up and over the exhaust. It can be a little tight trying to get this worked in there, so just take your time. Might have to kind of finesse it a little bit. What we're trying to do is get our hardware to drop down through the holes in our hitch. Once we have it like that, we're going to remove a pull wire. We're going to take a flange nut, and we want to get at least one of these started on each side, hand tight, so that way the hitch will support itself. Now that we have all of our hardware in place and hand tight, we can come back in with a 3/4 inch socket and snug it all down. Now we need to come back in with a torque wrench and tighten down all of the hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the eTrailer Class 3 2-inch trailer hitch receiver on our 2021 Subaru Crosstrek.